50% of the students have logged in today. I hope the others would at least listen to the recording, which would be uploaded. And today's session is on doable research projects in the qualitative research approach. You all are in the process of selecting a research project to be carried out. And you know that there are two main approaches to research, which is the quantitative and the qualitative. And today's emphasis is on the qualitative research approach. I would be presenting to you what is a research, and when doing a research, the two different pathways taken by the practitioner and the academic. And in each of these pathways, there are weaknesses. These weaknesses will be presented to you. And to overcome these weaknesses, what could be done, which is to engage in collaborative research, that would be discussed. And when engaging in collaborative research, why opt for the qualitative research approach? And finally, possible research problems in accounting in the qualitative research approach. Before this also, I have discussed with you what is research. A research always commences with a problem. In other words, an issue. Without a problem, a research cannot be commenced because the research process is all about finding a solution to a problem. In that particular process, you would be discovering the reality. ප්‍රශ්නයකට පිළිතුරු සොයා ගැනීම සඳහා යථාර්ථය හඳුනා ගැනීමේ කර්තව්‍යක යෙදෙනවා පර්යේෂණ තුළින්. Then if research is finding a solution to a problem, discovering the reality, this research would be done by a practitioner and also by an academic. Who is a practitioner? A practitioner would be people like you who would be qualifying from a professional accounting body and carrying out work in a business organization. Someone who has learned widely about his or her field and is actively working in that field. Those are practitioners. Who are academics? Academics would be someone who has theoretical knowledge, but not practical knowledge, because the academics, they actually engage in research work, lecturing, and tasks like that. Therefore, they have a good theoretical knowledge, but they are not engaging in the practice like the practitioner. Now, you have to understand this distinction between the practitioner and the academic, because we are saying that the practitioner would take a particular pathway and an academic would take another pathway. Therefore, before understanding the two pathways, it is important to understand who is a practitioner and who is an academic. Case study 1. This is actually a research carried out by a practitioner. For example, when you are employed by a company, someday as a practitioner, you may do a task like this. The management of your company is preparing for negotiations for salary increases. The director human resources asks you to provide some estimates of living costs in Colombo, where the company has its headquarters and major plant. Other plants are located in Anuradhapura, Jaffna, and Mathura, and he would like similar data for these cities too. You consult personnel at the Central Bank of Sri Lanka and obtain statistics published periodically. You find some relevant newspaper articles too. You compile all this, prepare a report, and submit the report to the Director Human Resources. Now, I said a research should begin with a problem. Here, what is the problem? It is necessary to find out some mechanism to increase the salaries. So that is the problem. And the practitioner for this task to solve this problem, data is being collected. What data? We see, you know, the distinction between the primary sources and the secondary sources. Primary sources would be specifically data collected for a particular research. And in qualitative approach, we use interviews, observations. And here we see secondary sources, data that is already available, which is not collected specifically for that research, but could be used as a secondary source for the research. Here we see that all data collected are secondary sources from the central bank, from newspaper articles. Now data is being collected and analyzed. So there would be some figures, and in narrative form, the story behind the numbers would be presented to the management, because they cannot go in for salary increase negotiations without any basis. Now, why is this practitioner doing this? Because in the job description, such tasks are there to be carried out by the practitioner. Practitioner is paid for this. The salary is paid for doing these tasks. But will the practitioner have in mind, oh, I'm doing a research? No, it is part and parcel of the job that he or she is doing. Therefore, the practitioner does not have the mental construct that he or she is doing a research. But case study 2. Your supervisor helps you to carry out a literature review. Now, your supervisor means an academic. Your supervisor helps you to carry out a literature review with respect to the accounting profession. Johnson and Sagill state that the British-based professional accounting bodies, the ACCA and the CIMA, have been more involved in the export of qualifications to the British post-colonies even after independence. What is the meaning of that? ACCA UK and CIMA UK, they try to secure markets outside the UK even after independence in the British post-colonies. There have been studies on the ACCA securing markets outside the UK in the British post-colonies. However, there are no studies with respect to CIMA securing markets outside the UK in the British post-colonies. Now, when we consider Sri Lanka, CIMA has secured its largest market outside the UK in Sri Lanka. Therefore, you decide to carry out a study on the case of CIMA in Sri Lanka. Data is collected through interviews. Now here we see that the primary sources are used, interviews and observations. Interviews with CIMA members, CIMA students, lecturers of CIMA tuition colleges and employers, and observations at CIMA events and meetings. And also there are secondary sources, that is through documentary review. And the data is to be analyzed thematically. Thematic analysis is one method of analyzing qualitative, based on the qualitative approach, analyzing data. And theorize drawing from Abbott's 1988 writings in the sociological analysis of professions on cultural control and social control. Now we see this case study begins with a literature review, prior studies that have been carried out. A gap is identified reviewing the prior studies. Then data is collected, and then to give meaning to the data, you analyze the data using a theory. Okay, starting with the gap in doing a literature review, collecting data, analyzing the data, and giving it meaning through a theory. Now, this is the process that is followed by a typical academic when doing a research. Now, I presented to you two case studies. One case study, what the practitioner does. Another case study, what an academic does. Then my question to you is, do you see a difference between the two case studies? If you can speak up, that's fantastic. But if you don't want to speak up, can you please type in your chat box your answer? You have to type just one word, yes or no. Do you see a difference between the two case studies? Yes or no? If you like, you could speak up. Very good. Excellent. You'll all say that you see a difference between the two case studies. Very good. Yes, there is a difference between the two case studies. What is the difference? Now we will see the research process in these two case studies. You begin with a problem. The research questions are there. Then you collect data. And the data is analyzed. But we see that in the first case study, okay, in the first case study, a theory was not used. But in the second case study, a theory is used by an academic because he or she is very good in theory. But actually speaking, that theory is required. Why? Because now in case study 1, it should be some one-off thing. Oh, increasing the salary. These are some bases that you could use and you will give it. But in future, what is the contribution? Then if there was a theory brought in, oh, there are theories like this, which could be used in deciding upon salary increases, then that theory has some generalizability to another context, in another place, in another organization, with respect to other individuals. If you're increasing the salaries, these theoretical underpinnings could be made relevant. There is some generalizability of the findings. But when there is an absence of theory, such generalizability is not there. That is why it is said qualitative research is not just narrating a story, but it is theory is used as a way of seeing and thinking about the world based on the data that is being carried out. Now, you know, in qualitative research, you mainly do case studies. What is a case study? You try to understand a particular problem. You try to find a solution based on that prevailing context, understanding what is happening within that context. And then things may happen between and among individuals. Things may happen between and among within an organization. Things may happen between and among countries. And all these individuals, business organizations, countries, they operate within a context. And when the context changes, what happens would change. Therefore, there is subjectivity. There is no generalizability based on the data. But the theory would bring in some generalization. But that generalization based on the bringing in a theory, if a practitioner does, will not be there. But if the practitioner and the academic would get together and do it, then the academic can help the practitioner with the theory. And also we see that the academic commenced the whole research or the work that had to be carried out, the research, the academic commenced with a literature review. It is highly academic, but the practitioner, the problem originated, problem came into being in that particular work environment. It is highly, there is practical significance in it. Practical implications are there. And then we see that though the academic and the practitioner, though they take two pathways, to overcome the limitations, the best thing is that the academic and practitioner work together to bring in synergies. Because the academic would start with a literature review. But how nice if the academic can get together with the practitioner and consider practitioner the actual problems in practice, and then do the literature review to see what the others have already done, and then come up with collect data and analyze it. And then the academic uses a theory and the practitioner does not use a theory. And therefore, if the academic can help the practitioner with the theory, there is generalizability for the findings and there would be a contribution to the knowledge. And so we see that working together, the academic and the practitioner, there would be certainly synergies brought in. Therefore, the best way is, what are the actual problems that are there in practice? And then you consider a literature review and find out the gap and see what has not been done. Then collect the data and analyze it. And when analyzing it, bring in a theory. And finally, after analyzing it, there would be the findings would have relevance to the practice, where there would be practical implications. That is the best way to carry out a research. So to overcome limitations, the best thing is to work in collaboration, the practitioner and the academic. Now, as I told you, there are individuals, there are business organizations, and there are countries. Now, with respect to individuals, recently I helped my church priest to carry out a study with respect to how and why religion has an influence to overcome drug addiction. Why do I use how and why questions? I have told you before this also, in qualitative research, we use how and why in a religious environment to overcome drug addiction in that particular context. How and why. In quantitative, we use especially the word what. What factors had an impact on implementing advanced management accounting techniques? What causal chains are found out in quantitative. But in qualitative, how and why? What, how and why? Now, as I told you, how and why, it is a particular set of individuals to overcome drug addiction, how and why religion had an influence. Then I want to recall how we worked out the question for the last research methodology examination. Professor Daya, before he passed away, he got together with me and another few lecturers, and we developed a case study with respect to how and why Sri Lanka used the QR code to manage the fuel consumption. And then we see it is like as a country in that particular context, how that particular management control system, QR system was used. That is for a country. But there are problems, issues in business organizations as well. Now, what I'm telling you is, rather than using issues relevant to a country or relevant to individuals, it is better to use an issue which emerged from a business organization, because you are undergoing training in audit firms and you're being sent to business organizations to carry out audits, and then most of y'all are doing audit, and there are some who are in non-audit sector. Therefore, you have good links with these business organizations. Therefore, as a case study, you could select a particular business organization and the business issue and study on it. Because grand research designs could be prepared, but the feasibility could be an issue. Because you will say, oh, I'm going to collect data from this place and that place, but you have a time constraint, and also you don't know whether you will gain access. So therefore, the best thing is for you to select a business organization that you are having links with and understand an issue that is there, and you could address how and why questions. And as I said, that business organizations issues will come up from the existing context, because as I told you in case studies, that issue would be studied based on that prevailing context. There is subjectivity, and then the business issues that come up from the internal environment and external environment. Internal environment, culture, leadership, employees. Then external environment, political, economic, social. All these environmental forces would give rise to different business issues. That is, these external and internal environmental forces would have an effect on the business operations, and that in turn would bring in business issues, and these business issues would be dealt by marketing, production, human resources, or accounting and all other functional areas. In a collaboration, they will get together and solve these business issues. So as I told you, business issues are coming up because there is an interaction between the business operation. When you go to do the business operations, you're not doing it in a vacuum. You're operating in a particular context, and there would be issues coming up, and then those have to be dealt by the functional areas. And we are focusing on the sphere of accounting. And then, as I told you, how and why questions should be addressed by the sphere of accounting, relevant to the accounting related issues. And here the focus is on the qualitative approach. And the issues could be mainly categorized as issues relevant to the accounting practice and issues relevant to the accounting profession. I will tell you some issues. Financial accounting and reporting. Amali, a lecturer in our department, she was speaking about integrated reporting for her master's. Now we can say how and why ABC Limited was able to, how and why ABC Limited implemented integrated reporting. Then management accounting. We have heard about so many management accounting techniques being implemented in business organizations. How and why the balance scorecard was a success story in XYZ Limited, or how and why activity-based costing gained relevance in X Limited. Then auditing. One of my students told me that in the present day context, when auditing, going concern is a significant issue because of the crisis, whether the business organization would continue without going into bankruptcy. Then how and why going concern of XYZ was reported, something like that. Then taxation, we know that because of the taxes, there are so many implications. due to the changes in tax rules. So how and why the changes in tax rules had an influence on the turnover of Dialog Asiata, something like that, or a telecommunication company. Then governance, risk management and compliance, risk management, how and why MAS Holdings was resilient to the COVID-19 pandemic. Then the accounting profession. What is the difference between accounting practice and accounting profession? Accounting practice is actually what is carried out using the techniques, putting it into practice. Accounting profession would be the people who are doing it. They form their professional body, there are education and training processes to disseminate knowledge, and there would be activities in order to gain recognition and acceptance for the professional body. And I carried out a study with my previous year students, how and why the role of accounting professionals in business organizations changed with the COVID-19 pandemic. So the accounting professionals have to change accordingly, adapt based on the changing context, based on the changing business environment, in order to gain recognition and acceptance for work and gaining access to work. Now you see that there are research problems which you could address. That is how and why questions are addressed in the sphere of accounting. That is, the research problems are related to accounting, and you are using the qualitative approach to research, and it would be a problem related to the accounting practice or the accounting profession. And the best thing is for you to find out, to have practical implications. Oh, in practice, what is the problem in this particular business organization? And then do the literature review and see, oh, the others have already done something like this to find a solution to this problem. But there is a gap that I can do. Collect data and analyzing it, you must use a theory. That is what your academic rigor is brought in. Bring a theory where there could be generalizability for the findings. Actually speaking, I took half an hour to present. Now I give you the opportunity to raise questions, any questions you all have with respect to your research problems that you are thinking about. Thank you.